In the following tutorial, we're going to take a look at MouseEvents in Actionscript 3. Now open up the MouseEvents_start file and also open up the DME program website to the basic event handling lecture. Now we're going to begin with this lecture because it's so important to understand how Flash works and why it does what it does. Now we're going to be working with the event model or events using MouseEvents in Flash, and it's important to understand the basic event model of Actionscript. And what it is that any event can be monitored and can run a function, basically. Events can be all sorts of different things. Playing timelines, clicking on buttons, pressing keys, stopping or starting a movie or a sound, or loading data from somewhere. And one of the things that is really interesting is that in ActionScript 2, they used to have a lot of different event models. So you can monitor events in different ways. But in ActionScript 3, there's a single event model that has the same syntax and the same structure for every single type of event. It doesn't even matter where the event comes from. So it's made it a lot more streamlined and a lot faster to process. In fact, the ActionScript virtual machine, AVM2, is much faster than the old ActionScript one. So anyway, the basic types of events that we may deal with are frame events, entering or leaving a frame, mouse events, which are clicking a mouse or clicking or holding down the mouse or rolling over a button. Now you might call them button events, but they're not. They're really mouse events because they're initiated by the mouse, even though they are initiated with an object, which might be a button. And of course the last one here are keyboard events. So with all events, we have basically a similar structure, and that is a function and event listener pair. The function is something that is created that defines what action that we should take, and it has a name. Then we create an event listener which is attached to an object so that we know what type of event we're waiting for that object to initiate. And then when that event happens, we can run the function that we defined before. So there's some stuff that's important to understand about the syntax of it. We begin by creating a function, then giving it a name, and then assigning a type of event that happens with that function. So anytime we have an event listener like we have below, the type of event is passed to the function, and so it has to be a part of an argument for that function. Then we have this void here, and that just says send back information, which sometimes is left off. It's not always important to have there. Then we have our actions that we want to run. The next thing we have is our event listener. Our event listener is added to a target. That target could be something specific like a button, or it could be somewhat generic such as the stage itself. Then we have a type of event which is an argument for that event listener, and it could be a mouse event .click, or it could be a movie event on complete. And then we have the function that we want to run. So you can read a little bit more about the syntax there, but here is a basic here's a basic example that we have. Here's function trace button event : mouse event. So it says that it's waiting for we are defining the name of a function called trace button. We are waiting for an event which is a mouse event, and the action to take is to trace clicked on and then event.target.name. And the way that this event.target.name works is that when we actually add the event listener, we have an object here. That object is what the event listener is attached to, so that when we click on that button, that event object is sent to the original function, and that's why we're able to say event.target.name, which outputs the name of the button that was the object that the event listener was added to. Might sound confusing, but once you get used to it, it'll be easy. Anyway, for our event listener, we have the button that we are targeting. We add an event listener to it, and as arguments of that event listener, we have a mouse event .click, so we know that we're clicking on that button, and we want it to run the function called trace button. So let's begin adding this code to our ActionScript file for our very first code here in the MouseEvents thing. Now I want you to notice that we have 3 different layers. We have our actions, buttons, and background. You may find things on different layers, but it doesn't really matter. Click on each and you'll notice in your properties each button has an in particular name, has a very unique name, and those are the instance names for those buttons, and those are we're going to need for sure. We also have an instance name on this output text, this dynamic text field. So let's click on the first one. Notice it says click underscore button, and we're going to need that here in just a minute. Let's go to our ActionScript window with the F9. You can also go to Window, bring up your actions there. That'll do it as well. And let's make sure that we click on the Actions layer. Now you'll notice that I already have a little bit of code here. It's a little comment that says all code goes below. And we're going to add comments for each of the different pieces of code that we add, each of the blocks of code. I do want to pin this script. And this is something that's really nice. When you click on that pin, it pins this active script so that even when you go and click on other things, I have to maximize that ActionScript window a little bit more. Even though I go and click on different objects, it doesn't change the code. If I didn't have that, there we go. If I didn't have that, then what would happen is when I click on different objects, I would lose my code window. Notice that now I'm not getting that code window until I go back to that ActionScript layer. So that's why it's really nice to have that script pinned. So I'm going to pin that script. Now I'm going to create a comment for the first click. This is going to be the mouse click. And I'm making it all in uppercase. That way I can really tell what the comments are. You don't have to make them in all uppercase, but it's something that you see often in order to make your comments really stand out. So this first thing that we need is a function, and make sure that it turns blue when you type it out. If you've misspelled it, you'll notice that it does not turn blue. Function, and then my click. Now with my click, it should be black. It's not going to be blue, and that's because we are creating our own named variable for this function. Now we're going to go ahead and put in our parenthesis, event, colon, mouse, event. And now we can do a colon, void, and then we'll have our first curly bracket, our open curly bracket. I like to go down a couple lines, finish the curly bracket so that I know that my syntax is good, and then go in between the two. Now, when it comes to this part, event, colon, mouse, event, and void, you'll find there are different ways that we can put that sometimes. Anyway, we're going to put in our trace command here, and it's going to say clicked on, and I'm going to put a little space before I have the end of that quote there, plus event dot target dot name. Now I can have a semicolon at the end, and now I want to add an event listener for this button. So this is going to be the click underscore btn dot, and you'll notice since we're using the underscore button suffix as a part of the instance name, when I hit that dot it gives me the code hinting for button objects. So I can double click on event listener, and this is going to be mouse event dot click, and it's all in uppercase. Then we're going to run my click and close that particular line of code, and we should be done. So to see the whole thing, I might have to come back just a little bit so you can see it. It says function my click event colon mouse event colon void trace clicked on, and then event.target.name, and then clicked on click underscore button dot add event listener mouse event dot click and my click, and we can now save this file. And when we save it, let's make sure that we take off the start so that we are giving it the correct name, because we don't want to keep the start on there when it's our own file, because we won't be able to tell that we've changed things. And we can test our movie with Control-Enter and see if that movie outputs something when we click on that first button. In the next tutorial, we're going to go through and adding the message to the output here, as well as looking at some of the other events that we have.